The canyon air was sharp with the scent of sage and dry stone. Jack Brewer adjusted the strap of his weather-worn pack, pausing to listen. The wind sighed over the ridge, and somewhere far below, the faint echo of shifting hooves stirred the silence. He squinted into the sunlit valley, shadowed under jagged cliffs, the kind of place few people ventured willingly. "Do you hear that?" Maria asked behind him, lowering her camera. Her voice, usually steady, carried a thread of uncertainty. Jack turned. Maria's eyes were wide, scanning the horizon beyond her lens. She'd been photographing wildlife for over a decade and had that quiet instinct when something was off. He trusted it. He trusted her more than he trusted himself most days. "Yeah," he murmured. "I heard it too." They moved carefully down the slope, boots crunching over brittle earth. It was early spring, but nothing green dared to grow in that part of the high desert. The sun had baked everything dry. Even the ravens flew higher to avoid the heat radiating from the ground. Jack scanned the terrain with the cautious alertness of a former park ranger. Every step was calculated, every sound catalogued. The years after the fire, after the job, after the long hospital stay, had taken their toll. His left knee ached with every incline. But out here, with no concrete or sirens, just open sky and dirt, the noise in his head dulled. Then he saw her. Standing still, a stone at the edge of a cracked arroyo, was a horse unlike any he'd ever seen. Huge. Not just tall, but massive in presence. Her coat shimmered silver-white in the sun, with streaks of dust caked into the dips of her flanks. Her mane, tangled and wind-whipped, hung past her neck like a lion's. But it wasn't just her size that stunned him, it was her stillness. She didn't flee, didn't even flinch. Maria raised her camera instinctively, but then slowly lowered it. "She's looking right at us." Jack nodded, unable to speak. The mare's eyes, deep and unblinking, locked with his. They held no fear, no wildness, just exhaustion. Her sides heaved with slow, labored breaths. Her belly was swollen, not in the usual way. There was weight there, but it seemed wrong. Too heavy, too low. "She's pregnant," Maria whispered. "Or in trouble," Jack said grimly. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, hands open at his sides. The mare didn't move. Up close, he saw fresh cuts along her shoulder, thin, straight, unnatural. Not barbed wire, not another horse. These were clean, purposeful, almost surgical. Maria crept behind him, her steps nearly soundless. She dropped to one knee and took a series of photos. "Jack, these scars, they look like incisions. Someone did this." He didn't respond. His mind was already ticking through possibilities. Wild Mustangs didn't come this close to humans. Not unless they had no strength left. And the size of her. He'd heard stories from old-timers about genetically manipulated breeds, but nothing in the wild. Nothing like this. He pulled out the small emergency satellite phone he kept buried in his pack. It hadn't been used in months, but the battery still held. "Who are you calling?" Maria asked. "Eric Weller." She blinked. "The vet? I thought he retired." "He owes me a favor," Jack muttered and dialed. The line crackled. After 2 rings, a gravelly voice answered. "Who is this?" "It's Jack. I need you to come to Blackroot Ridge. Bring your kit." A pause. "That's government land." "Not anymore. Burned in the fire 6 years back. No one's claimed it." "What's this about?" Jack glanced at the mare, who had finally lowered her head to nibble at dry weeds. A Mustang. Huge. Pregnant. Scars like surgical cuts. "You need to see this." Another silence. Then, "I'll be there by sunset." Jack hung up and exhaled slowly. Maria looked at him, concern etched into her face. "You trust him." "He used to work for a military-adjacent lab. Animal genetics. He walked away after some incident. He'll know what this is, or what it was supposed to be." Maria stared at the mare through her camera lens. "She's beautiful, but broken. You can see it in her eyes." Jack didn't answer. He crouched near the horse, not close enough to touch, but close enough to see her tremble. A shudder passed through her side, like a contraction, but it didn't follow the rhythm of normal labor. Hours passed in wary silence. The sun dipped, smearing the sky in molten orange. The mare hadn't moved more than a few feet. Maria laid out water in a pan they kept for emergencies. The mare drank gratefully. Jack stayed nearby, his presence calm, non-threatening. As the shadows stretched long across the rocks, the distant rumble of an engine broke the stillness. A dusty pickup appeared on the ridge, its tires crunching gravel. Weller stepped out. He was older than Jack remembered, beard gray, posture a little stooped, but his hands were steady as ever. He carried 2 cases, one for sedation, one for diagnostics. "She let you this close?" Weller asked, approaching with careful steps. "She didn't have a choice," Jack said. "She's too tired to run." Weller dropped beside the mare without fanfare. She lifted her head, sniffed the air, then went still again. "She's not afraid," Maria said quietly. "She's beyond fear," Weller murmured, unpacking his tools. He examined her methodically, checked her eyes, mouth, and the scars. He murmured soft reassurances as he moved. Then, pulling out a portable scanner, he gelled her side and pressed the probe to her skin. The screen flickered, then steadied. Jack watched Weller's eyes change. At first curious, then alarmed, then something colder. Something Jack hadn't seen in years. "What is it?" Jack asked. Weller didn't look away from a screen. He swallowed hard. "She's carrying one full. But it's not normal." "What do you mean?" "I mean," Weller said, lifting the probe and standing slowly, "this foal is too developed, too strong, and its skeletal proportions aren't consistent with wild Mustangs. Not even close." He stared at the mare, then turned to Jack. "She shouldn't exist. Neither should what's inside her." Jack glanced at Maria. Her face had gone pale. The canyon, so vast and empty moments ago, now felt too small, as though the walls themselves were listening. The mare suddenly shifted, breathing hard again. Her legs trembled. "Is she going into labor?" Maria asked. "Not yet," Weller said, "but soon. And when it happens, I don't know if she'll survive it." Silence fell. The wind kicked up dust across the rocks. Jack stepped closer, brushing his hand along the mare's shoulder. She didn't pull away. He looked into her eyes and saw something that chilled him. Relief. As if she'd been waiting for someone. "Anyone," he whispered. "What did they do to you?" And the mare, too tired to answer, lowered her head again and waited for whatever came next. Night settled like a heavy shroud over the canyon, quieting even the wind. The mare Solara, as Maria had begun calling her, stood beneath a gnarled juniper, her body rigid with discomfort. Jack sat nearby on a flat rock, eyes never leaving her silhouette. He'd set up a perimeter earlier, marking potential escape routes and blind spots. Old habits, born from old fears. But this wasn't a wildfire or a poacher he was watching for. This was something unknown, something that clawed at his instincts without shape or sound. Weller moved methodically under the beam of a headlamp, preparing another dose of sedative. She's pushing herself too far. Her muscles are fighting the foal's weight. Maria knelt beside the gear bag, sorting through sterile cloths and saline. She looked up, her brow furrowed. "Why not deliver the foal now?" "Because she'll die," Weller replied, not unkindly. "It's not ready, but it's too strong. Any misstep could rupture her from the inside. We wait until the signs are right, or we lose them both." Jack listened in silence, running a hand through his hair. He hated waiting. He hated not knowing. The scars on the mare's body, the strange proportions in the ultrasound, it all led back to questions with no answers. And he didn't trust unanswered questions. Maria stood and stepped over to him. "You're quiet." "Thinking. About what?" He watched Solara breathe. Each inhale seemed to hurt her. About why she didn't run. Even hurt. She should have bolted. But she waited for us. Maria nodded slowly. She knew someone was coming. Jack turned to look at her. "You think she's what?" "Sentient. I think she's intelligent. More than instinct. There's understanding in her eyes." She glanced toward Weller, who was now checking vitals. "And I think Eric knows more than he's telling." Jack didn't disagree. Weller was skilled, brilliant even, but guarded. He hadn't asked many questions. Just acted. like a man who'd seen something before and didn't want to see it again. Back at the lab, Jack said suddenly, "You worked with horses, right?" Maria hesitated. "Briefly. Before I got into wildlife photography full-time." "Why? You ever hear about projects involving genetic enhancements?" Her lips pressed together. "Rumors. Nothing proven. Some whispered about military contracts, performance breeds. Horses bred for war, speed, resilience." Jack grunted. "Sounds like science fiction." "Maybe. Until now." A soft groan escaped Solara's throat, low and aching. Weller rushed to her side, checking her again, her blood pressures dropping. Jack rose to his feet. "What does that mean?" "She's losing strength faster than expected. We might have to intervene." "Then do it." "It's not that simple." Weller snapped, then caught himself. He drew in a breath, steadied. "If we go in now, I need more than just hands. I need a controlled space, sterile instruments, and backup, none of which we have." "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying if she survives the night, it'll be a miracle." The canyon fell back into silence. Solara shifted her weight, but her legs buckled slightly. She stayed standing only because the tree propped her up. Maria moved to her side and placed a hand gently on her neck. The mare flinched, then stilled. "She's burning up," Maria whispered. "She's in pain." Jack turned to Weller. "You said she shouldn't exist. What did you mean?" Weller's eyes flicked to him, dark and tired. "Years ago, a private firm funded a project. They wanted to create endurance animals for terrain warfare. Stronger bones, higher pain tolerance, faster recovery. I was brought in as a consultant, but the tests, they pushed the animals too far. I left after one of them died mid-run. Heart exploded." Jack stiffened. "What does that have to do with her?" "One of the Mares from the early trials escaped during a transfer. Disappeared. They never found her. She was tagged, but her signal died. This," he gestured to Solara, "this could be her, or her offspring." Maria's voice was hollow. "You think she's carrying a second-generation experiment?" Weller nodded slowly. "That foal in her belly, it's stronger than it should be. Too developed for its gestation window. If this is what I think it is, it's something they were never supposed to breed." Jack paced away from them both, hands on his hips, staring out into the darkness. A chill settled in his gut. "If this gets out, they'll come for it," Weller said flatly. "And they won't care who's in the way." Maria looked up sharply. "We can't let that happen." Jack returned to Solara's side. She watched him. Her eyes, though tired, were still focused, still clear. She blinked slowly, like she recognized something in him. "I don't want her to die out here," Maria said softly. "She won't," Jack replied. "Not on my watch." But even as he said it, the doubt clawed at him. He'd seen enough helpless nights in the field to know nature didn't make promises. Weller sat down on a crate, rubbing his temples. "We need to make a decision by morning. If she's still declining, we move her to my old field clinic. I've got equipment stashed there. It's a risk, but better than waiting for her to collapse." "Where?" Jack asked. "South Slope, past the burned ridge. Abandoned years ago after the fire, but still standing." Jack nodded. "We'll do it." The three fell into a heavy quiet. Overhead, the stars blinked into view one by one. Maria leaned against Jack, wrapping her arms around her knees. Weller checked his watch, and then dozed briefly against a rock wall, medical bag close to hand. Solar's breathing slowed but didn't stabilize. Jack kept watch through the night, a rifle slung over his shoulder, not for predators, but for anything else that might come sniffing. Around 3 a.m., a rustle echoed from the valley floor. Jack stood quickly, eyes scanning the darkness. Just a breeze, maybe. Or maybe not. He didn't sleep that night. Neither did Solara. By dawn, the sky turned pale gold. Solara stood, trembling but alive. The foal inside her shifted visibly beneath her skin. Maria whispered, "She made it." But Jack didn't smile. His eyes were on the ridge across the canyon, where a distant glint, a reflection, maybe, caught the morning sun and vanished just as quickly. They weren't alone anymore. The mare was faltering. By mid-morning, her breaths came short and shallow, foam flecking her lips, sweat glistening along her flanks despite the cool wind that swept through the ravine. Jack helped brace her against the tree trunk, but even he could feel her body folding inward, the strength bleeding out of her inch by inch. Weller knelt at her side, lips drawn into a line so tight it might have been carved in stone. His hands, always so calm, now moved faster, less assured. "She's not going to make it if we wait any longer," he said, pulling open his weathered black bag. "We move her now, or we lose them both." Jack looked down the narrow path that led toward the south slope, toward the clinic Weller claimed still stood. It would take at least 2 hours on foot, longer by trailer. But they couldn't risk more time here. Not with what they might have seen on the ridge. Not with her faltering every moment. "I'll go get the trailer ready," Jack said, already moving. "I'm going with you," Maria said, grabbing her camera and water canteens. "You should stay." "I'm not leaving her." Their eyes locked. Jack knew better than to argue. Maria had already made up her mind. Together, they hurried back up the incline, lungs burning against the altitude. Behind them, Solara let out a long, low cry, and for a moment, it sounded less like a horse and more like something human, wounded and afraid. The old trailer sat nestled beneath a collapsed shed, where Jack had parked it a year ago during a winter scouting trip. He and Maria had lived off-grid for weeks back then, trying to find peace after the hospital and the endless gray of loss. It felt like a lifetime ago. Maria opened the doors, checked the boards, and cleared the path. Jack pulled the old ATV from its tarp, hot-wired it back to life, with a prayer and 3 sparks of protest. Within minutes, they were driving back toward the makeshift camp, dust curling in their wake. When they arrived, Weller had the mare sedated just enough to steady her legs. Jack and Maria guided her gently, painfully slowly, into the trailer. She staggered once, nearly collapsing, but something in her eyes steeled, and she climbed inside. Maria exhaled shakily. "She wants to live." "She doesn't just want to," Jack murmured. "She needs to." They didn't speak much during the drive. The ATV wasn't fast, and the path wound steeply between boulders and charred trees, remnants of the fire Weller had mentioned. The land still wore its scars. So did they. Jack focused on keeping the trailer balanced. One wrong move could shatter everything. Weller rode in the back with Solara, one hand on her neck, whispering words in a language only she could understand. Occasionally he checked her vitals, adjusted her sedation, monitored the rhythmic thud of the unborn foal's heart through his scanner. Maria, sitting beside Jack, watched the trees like shadows might leap from behind them. "What if that reflection wasn't just light?" she asked finally. "I've been thinking about that," Jack said. "And if someone's watching us, they're waiting. That worries me more than if they'd already made a move." She nodded slowly. "Then we don't let them take her." They reached the south slope by late afternoon. The old clinic sat half buried in blackened timber and creeping vines. Its outer fence collapsed, but the core structure still stood. Weller jumped out first, checking the roof, the floorboards, and the generator he had stashed under a panel near the back. After a tense few minutes, lights flickered on inside the examination room. Jack backed the trailer into place. They opened the doors and guided Solara down with the kind of care normally reserved for glass or bones. She didn't resist. She walked into the clinic as though she remembered it, as though part of her had been here before. Once inside, the transformation began. Weller moved like a man reborn. His hands regained their old rhythm. The sterile tools, the table, the quiet hum of the old generator. It all came back to him in muscle memory. He ran full diagnostics, scanning the foal again, and this time he showed Jack and Maria the monitor. It wasn't just a horse. The foal's body was forming too quickly. Muscle definition sharper than normal, bones longer, denser. The heartbeat was strong, almost aggressive. But what stunned him most was the skull, slightly broader across the brow. Eyes already active. Moving. "It's aware," Weller whispered. "That's weeks ahead of schedule." Maria touched the screen. "It's beautiful." Weller didn't smile. "It's dangerous." Jack stood back, watching the flicker in Weller's eyes. "You're afraid of it." "I'm afraid of what it represents. If this is what they made in secret, what comes next?" As if to answer him, the generator sputtered, then caught again. The lights dimmed momentarily. Jack walked to the window and looked out at the fading light. They'd made it. For now. But dusk wasn't always a promise of safety. Sometimes it was just a moment before the next storm. So Lara shifted on the table, her legs trembling. The sedation was wearing thin, but they couldn't risk more. Weller moved quickly, checking dilation. "She's ready," he said. "It's time." Jack locked the door. Maria stood at Solara's head, stroking her mane gently, murmuring softly, almost in prayer. The mare let out a long, pained breath. Her body tensed. Weller took his place. The birth had begun. The birth began in silence, broken only by Solara's heaving breaths and the ticking of Weller's watch. Jack held the overhead light steady, while Weller positioned himself at the mare's flank, sleeves rolled, eyes narrowed in grim concentration. Maria stood at Solara's head, her voice low and melodic, whispering words that seemed to steady the mare's panic. The air was thick with urgency, yet it all moved with an eerie calm, like the eye of a storm. Solara groaned, her muscles tightening in waves. Blood trickled to the floor. Weller adjusted his grip and leaned in. "Crown's visible," he muttered. "But it's big. Too big." Jack felt his heart thump hard in his chest. "Can she do this?" "She'll try," Weller replied. "But it's going to tear her apart unless we're careful." The foal's head emerged slowly, unnaturally broad across the brow. Its coat gleamed wet silver under the harsh clinic lights. Weller worked quickly, hands steady but strained, coaxing the creature into the world. Solara gave another great push, her hooves scraping against the floor, and suddenly, the foal was halfway out. Then it stopped. Weller froze. Shoulders are stuck. Jack didn't wait for instruction. He moved to Weller's side, gripping the mare's haunch to brace her. "Tell me what to do." Weller nodded toward the shoulder. "You'll need to lift. Careful. Don't pull straight." Maria's voice softened further. "You're almost there, girl. Just a little more." Together, Weller and Jack adjusted the angle. Solara screamed, not a whinny, but a raw, ragged cry that shook the clinic walls. Then, in a single convulsive motion, the foal slid free, crashing to the padded table in a mess of fluid and trembling limbs. It didn't cry. It didn't move. Jack's chest seized. Maria let out a sharp gasp. Weller didn't speak. He just dropped to his knees beside the foal and began clearing its mouth, rubbing its chest, stimulating breath. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on, breathe." Jack moved to Solara, who had collapsed in exhaustion, her body slick with sweat, her eyes fluttering. He pressed his hand to her side. She was alive. Barely, but fading. Then the foal stirred. A twitch. Then a shudder. It drew in a ragged breath and exhaled with a strange, almost metallic cry that reverberated through the room. Its eyes snapped open, bright silver, like polished steel, unnervingly aware. Maria stepped back, hand over her mouth. It's not a normal foal." The creature tried to stand. Legs buckled, trembled, but it rose faster than any newborn Jack had ever seen. In minutes, it was upright, breathing steadily, its eyes scanning the room like it understood far more than it should. Solara raised her head and looked at the foal. No fear, no confusion, just recognition. She exhaled a soft nicker, and the foal moved to her, pressing its nose to hers. The bond formed instantly. Weller stared at them, stunned. That foal, it's already walking, processing, responding. Jack watched it nuzzle against Solara's chest, then glanced toward them again. There was intelligence in its gaze, not just survival instinct, something deeper. "This wasn't an accident," Jack said. "Someone made this." "No," Weller agreed. "They designed it." "But why?" Maria whispered. Weller's voice was distant. "Because humans never stop. We chase perfection, build it, breed it, twist nature until it reflects our ambition. And now here it is." Jack felt a chill run through him. He looked around the clinic, its walls stained with age and memory. This place had seen the beginning of something unnatural, and now it had borne witness to its second coming. Outside, the wind picked up. Jack moved to the window and saw the same glint from the ridge again, this time closer. A dark vehicle parked halfway down the slope. Men emerging, moving with precision. "We've got company," he said, turning back. Weller moved instantly, grabbing his emergency bag and loading syringes into his coat pocket. They tracked her. Probably had a satellite lock from the moment we started moving. Jack checked his rifle, heart pounding. "How many?" "Too many," Weller replied. "They won't talk. They'll take." Maria stepped in front of the foal. "We're not letting them." Jack looked at her, his voice quiet but firm. "We need to move. Now." Weller nodded. "I know a back trail. It's narrow, rough, but leads to the ravine basin. They won't follow with vehicles." "Can she walk?" Jack asked, nodding to Solara. Weller checked her briefly. "Barely, but she'll try." Jack moved fast, helping Weller wrap the foal in a makeshift harness to lead it. The creature stood calmly, as if it understood the danger. It didn't fight the harness. It watched everything. Listened. Solara staggered as she stood, but when the foal moved, she found her legs again. Maria wiped her eyes. She's doing it for her baby. Outside, the sound of boots on gravel echoed through the trees. Voices low, clipped, carried on the wind. "They're close," Jack warned. They slipped out the back, into the dense brush, hidden by dusk and thick pine. Every step was deliberate. Every breath held. The foal moved beside them in silence, its silver coat reflecting the dying light. Jack took one last glance behind. Through the shattered clinic window, a figure stood inside, watching, waiting. He turned away and followed the others down the slope. Darkness closed in, but they kept moving, one foot in front of the other. 3 humans, a wounded mare, and something that should not have existed, something born not of nature, but of man's restless ambition. And still, somehow, it felt like hope.